You want to use or you have to fight against a Hammerhead Gunship. How do you use this tank efficiently? And what are some things to look out for? And that's what I'm going to cover today. And we're going to start out with weaknesses and defenses of the Hammerhead Gunship. So what are some of the weaknesses of the Hammerhead? And first, we're going to look at the 10 plus toughness. It's about average. It means against any anti-vehicle fire from big tanks or anything designed to take them out, it will be incredibly susceptible. And that problem is made worse with a 3+ save. How can we defend against this, and what are some of its defenses? Well, to begin with, it has a 10-inch movement. And this is great because it allows it to get where it's going without having to advance and sneak between terrain so it can stay in cover. And with a 10 toughness, this is well protected against small arms fire. It'll have to damage on 5s or 6s. Against stronger mid-strength weapons like plasma, the Hammerhead will hold up fairly well. And you won't have to be concerned with a single unit like a Redemptor Dreadnought shooting the Hammerhead. But shots from multiple sources will quickly take this tank down. But what's solid is its 14 wounds, which makes this a little bit more difficult to take down with those mid-strength weapons, and a little bit more difficult to take down with single shots from stronger anti-tank fire. But the long range on the Hammerhead's main turret weapons allows this to really stay out of range of a lot of those mid-strength weapons. And its secondary, smaller, shorter range fire allows for great support to anything around it or to keep smaller units at bay. But as always with any vehicle, one of its biggest weaknesses are things with anti-vehicle keywords. Terminators, Carathon, and Locust Heavy Destroyers will quickly put an end to your Hammerhead. How do we get the best results from our Hammerhead tank? And to talk about that, we need to talk about movement. And we need to understand what the purpose of this tank is and its job. Now, you wouldn't be mistaken in thinking its job is to take down vehicles and tougher units. But the Hammerhead's job goes beyond this. And in a way, one of its biggest jobs is to just stand there and look scary. Because its real job is to help you control firing lanes and support your units on objectives. And controlling fire lanes is pivotal in helping you score points and preventing your opponent from doing so. So how are we going to accomplish this? To begin with, at the start of every battle, you have to be able to identify where your firing lanes are and the ones you want to control. Using the Hammerhead to support control of a firing lane from either side is a great way to pen your opponents in and keep them pressured. This creates a greater number of areas that is difficult for them to cross because they risk their units being destroyed. The downside to this is that there is less firepower because it is more spread out. Another option is to deploy them both on the same side, giving you greater firepower and fewer firing lanes, but making it easier to force your opponent to a specific objective and allowing you more control over what's going on. Now let's get into what everybody thinks of when they think of the Hammerhead, and that is offense. And its abilities help to bring this even further. Armor Hunter, which is going to give it +1 to hit when targeting monsters and vehicles, and Targeting Array, giving it the ability to reroll 1 hit roll or 1 wound roll. Now, how effective are these abilities for the Hammerhead? Let's talk about that by looking at the first turret weapon option, the Ion Cannon. The Ion Cannon has a regular profile and an overcharged profile. Both have a damage of 3. Now, its standard profile has a 7 strength and a -1 AP. At 60 inches, it can hit just about anything it can see on the board. This is excellent for any meta that focuses more on infantry or mid-toughness enemies. Now, this can shoot into vehicles and monsters that are much stronger, but this is really going to benefit from an observer unit with a marker-like keyword, because its standard profile only has a -1 AP. And if you can negate cover, you might be able to force your opponent into spending command points. Well, what about its overcharged profile? Well, that brings it to a strength of 8 and -2 AP. Now, it does have the risk of hazardous, so if you fail that and roll a 1, you are taking 3 mortal wounds. And this can push you to wounding on 2s on a lot of infantry. And at a -2 AP, the power of this goes up significantly. Matched with marker lights, this is huge. And I think it's one of the reasons why myself and many other people prefer this weapon over our next one, the Railgun. The Railgun is possibly the Tau's most iconic weapon. And everything about the Hammerhead's abilities takes the Railgun from a sometimes deadly weapon to just a deadly weapon. Now, what makes this so deadly? Well, to begin with, at a 72-inch range, it means that if it can see you, it can hit you. And its strength of 20 means that without modifiers, it's always wounding something at least a 3. And things like dreadnoughts, it's going to be wounding on 2s. And at a -5 AP, anything with a 3+ save will not get a save, even with the benefits of cover. And topping that off with D6 + 6 damage, enough to cripple or destroy just about any vehicle. And on wound rolls of 6, it has the added benefit of doing devastating wounds. Now, it does only have one shot and a ballistic skill of 4+. But that's okay, because it has a heavy keyword if you don't move. But that's overshadowed because you're going to get +1 to hit to vehicles and monsters anyways. And that's usually what you're going to be shooting with the Railgun. But how do we use the Railgun to its max efficiency? To begin with, your main target should be monsters and vehicles without an invul save. And when it comes to shooting at targets with an invul save, you want to aim towards things with a 5+ or a 6+ invul. Now, Custodes and Necrons have generally a 4+ invul. And if you want to start shooting at those, the ion cannon is the superior choice. But if you need to shoot things like knights, well, the Railgun is a must-have. Having an observer unit with marker lights can be very beneficial when shooting something that doesn't have an invul save with the Railgun, because they will remove cover, meaning that a vehicle with a 3+ save will get no save at all, even if they have a way to reduce armor penetration. But what do you do if you want to shoot a Tyrannifex or a Rogel Dorn, who have the ability to take a damage roll and make it 0? I'm going to answer that question shortly when we get to Seeker missiles, because that actually has a pretty fun solution. When it comes to choosing secondary weapons for the Hammerhead, there are 3 options: the Twin Pulse Carbine, the Smart Missile System, and the Accelerator Burst Cannon. And the Accelerator Burst Cannon is the best option. The Twin Pulse Carbine has Twin Linked, which is pretty decent, but no AP, and a strength of 5. The Smart Missile System has indirect fire, but the reason the Accelerator Burst Cannon is the best choice is because more shots always equals more wounds going through compared to Twin Linked. And Twin Linked doesn't become better unless you have a 5+ you're trying to roll on. But with the Accelerator Burst Cannon also having -1 AP, it means that it is almost always going to get more wounds through. Earlier I mentioned Seeker missiles, and the Hammerhead can take 2. And what's so great about the Seeker missiles? Nothing in particular. They're only 1 shot each, and they're pretty strong. I mentioned their importance when targeting things like a Tyrannifex or a Rogel Dorn, who have the ability once per game to take a damage to 0. And if you're using a Railgun, most of the time, people will wait until you use that to activate this ability. So one of the great things about the Seeker missiles is that you can shoot them first. And this can pressure your opponent to possibly activate that ability or do damage despite the fact they might absorb the Railgun anyways. So what do we know about the Hammerhead at the end of this? This is not a tank that you build your list around. The Hammerhead is a vehicle that you use to support the units that you've built your list around. And it's great for softening up units for battlesuits to come in with fusion blasters and finish them off, or finish off surviving vehicles. And the ion cannon is great to take out infantry and support units on objectives. And I hope this helps you to better use your Hammerhead and get the best use out of it. Happy hunting.